Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap. My name is Seth Krussman here. Once again, Ben Brayshaw, Dan Micklin. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. It's August.
I know.
I'm just kind of like, wow, where did summer go? All this rain, and it's been crazy here.
Back to school shopping. It's just like, wow.
Do you back to school shop if you homeschool?
I don't know.
I'd love to hear back from some of you guys. How do you do it if you're homeschooling? Is that one of those costs that you can just kind of layer out throughout the rest of the year, or is that something that you do as well? Like everybody gets on board with back to school.
I think my wife does back to school shopping for herself. I'm not sure how that works, but that's
I think that's part of every shopping.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's next show. Today is what we're going to be talking about is unlocking the secrets of long-term care and safeguarding your future. This is a great show for us to have on Money on Tap. There's a huge demographic inside of what we work with as financial planners and financial advisors. Right now, the baby boomer population coming through has just a significant need, as the numbers out there express, as we take a look at the demographics and what happens over the age of 70 and the need that's in that long-term care, and how few people really tackle this subject in a way that empowers your ability to move through and understand what these numbers mean to you and how you can plan for the probability of having some kind of a long-term care need. We're going to jump into this here with you. We're going to actually have quite a bit of fun in this show because, it's a topic that's a little sensitive. We get it. It's understandable why. It's one that's very close to my heart with both of my parents in this demographic as we speak. So, we kind of had that conversation before we got going here. It's like, wow, this is my world. So I'm going to, get to share some of that experience with you, I hope, as well. And either way, we're hoping that you're going to be able to be empowered through the topic today and come back to us here at Money on Tap, Brayshaw Financial Group with, whatever your questions are. First and foremost, that's one of the things we're here to do. We're here to raise questions that you have not had at your dinner table conversation, your coffee table conversation, and really bring to the table some solutions that allow you to, onboard yourself, really to, again, be empowered through this process. With that, we're going to jump into Money in the News.
And first up, coming to us from Fortune, it's an article about Elon Musk changing the Twitter brand. He's renamed it X, which fits right into his portfolio of holdings, I suppose, right? All the different things that enterprises and entities he owns, he likes to mix in that X. But for a lot of people, this was seemingly a bit of a shock, and based upon some predictions in the branding world, is going to be an absolute flop. Now, I'm not on Twitter, so this is kind of slow moving news to me. I didn't feel this or recognize this when it happened. But we have seen a couple of the other major players in the tech world make a similar change. Facebook changed to Meta, and that was in support of their, some odd $1 billion investment in the metaverse, right? Mm-hmm. So there seemed to be some sense to that. And then as well, Google changed its name to Alphabet, similarly because they have a number of different businesses, and they didn't want to be kind of lumped into that one cart. But Twitter's a little bit different in that it kind of is what it is, number one, and number two, the whole language around it, right? The tweet and the retweet. What's going to happen with that, I wonder?
This whole thing with Twitter and Elon Musk buying it out, I'll tell you, it gave it a much better opportunity to be a real company at that point. I mean, I think it was so jaded. I think manipulated throughout its tenure. It's pretty horrific to think about how the number of people Elon Musk let go in that company to still maintain and meet the same standards of that is pretty amazing to know what was kind of going on behind the scenes and some of the exposure I've read in articles and some of that stuff. But I do think the rebranding, I think the idea of tweeting and Twitter, and the article points out, like this is like they've changed these words into verbs. I mean, it's like, hey, did you tweet or retweet? I think that's really interesting. I was on Twitter for a short period of time. I mean, when Trump was in office, I mean, I literally listened to everything he had to say. And, so it was really the only way you could get real news, Dan. So, I mean, it's just kind of funny.
I do miss Trump Twitter, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I know.
That's about the end of it, but I do miss that
I would
part.
be as frustrated and tweet everything he probably tweeted too. I mean, at the end of the day, it's, he couldn't get anything out. So, but I do think the big piece that's lost are those words. I really think there's no statement on, are you, I don't know. I mean, maybe Seth, but I mean, the idea of brand X, I mean, are you now not tweeting, you're branding? Oh, did you see what he branded? I mean, what is the word? What are they doing?
Yeah, nothing's really going to flow out the tongue quite like a tweet, right? I mean, there's iconic messaging in this generation now that we're just to be able to change that. And what is it going to be? Is it going to have the same gravitas? I don't know. I think we can understand maybe why Elon's doing what he's doing, right? There's 50% loss of its revenue from advertising since October. I mean, that's significant. And maybe it's like, well, we're at the newest of our lows. Why not? One of the questions that this article raises is what's more powerful, the Twitter brand or Elon's brand? And at this time, I would say probably Elon has a more significant brand than Twitter. And that's when, might as well go ahead and pull the ripcord on this. Interesting how quickly it happened. It was like over a weekend. Like, hey, send me your best brand idea for a rebrand on Twitter. A day later, boom. It's like, who does that? Who pulls the trigger like that on $4 billion as it stands at this moment? That's a little bit dicey as far as the value. How do you evaluate a brand? Facebook we're still looking at Facebook, not Meta, at 59 billion. Instagram 47.4. Twitter somewhere around 15 to 20 billion. But anyways, I don't even recall why the 4 billion got thrown in there. Even at the top of this article, if you want to send this article to somebody, you can email it, you can post it at LinkedIn, or there's still a bird right there for you to go ahead and repost. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of big companies have done that rebranding. I mean, I think it talks about Meta, but they didn't change the name Facebook. It's still Facebook is the app. They wanted to expand. Same with Google. You still Google things, as it makes the point of, but Alphabet is the owner of the company. It's like they have other things they're offering. So it is interesting where the stuff's going. But I do think this is a bold move, and I think you're right, Seth, that I do think that Elon has a bigger brand, but I don't think that's forever. I feel like Twitter had a huge. I mean, everyone in the world knows what Twitter is. I mean, there's 7 billion people. I mean, it's probably 699.
I think part of the problem is
don't.
I think Twitter's brand and Elon's brand have always collided, right? So when he took over, they immediately shed a whole bunch of users, a whole bunch of advertisers. So maybe this is just his final stamp on making it his own. I just don't know if it's a wise move, though. I just don't know about that. Right.
It's not resellable as much as it was before. But I do think you're right. Maybe this is like hey, Twitter's underneath me. It's mine. This is what we're naming it. It definitely could be a power play.
Nice to be a billionaire.
Super strong. Yeah. Hey, job openings hit the lowest level in 2 years as demand for workers cools by the Associated Press. This is a little bit of an inflection point, I think, of what I can take away from this article. It's the post-pandemic economy has been cooling a bit. Job openings dropped to 9.6 million in June. That's due to that's from the Labor Department as of Tuesday. Lower than 10.3 million in April, the fewest in more than 2 years. This has some impact, I believe, where we've looked to the Fed to try to cool this job market down, and that being one of those indicators that we've kind of speculated, does it have the weight that we've thought it has, or they've told us it has, or the significance and the importance for them to start to ratchet back some of those rate increases that we've gone through. More will be revealed. At this point, what my takeaway is from this is that we finally have gotten to the place where people have kind of reached the balance of companies raising their income levels and the delivery to those prospects, and trying to keep the seats in the jobs, and those jobs meeting the capacity that they've needed to now.
This is an interesting conversation, and I think, guys, this is a much bigger conversation than just like, hey, this is what the recent job reports are. I think we're looking at such a microcosm of the job reports between, the 1.6 jobs for every unemployed, down from its peak earlier this year of 1.9. There's honestly, you want more jobs than you have people. I mean, that obviously is what we've been dealing with, and ultimately we'd like to get to the point where we have the choice as a business owner to hire this person over that person, right? And but the real issue here is that the number of people retiring every day is automatically forcing up the number of jobs compared to the number of people ready to do those jobs. And, the number of people leaving the workforce every day is really a hard number. Like, I really think the Fed, when they talked about, and Dan, you and I had a conversation a long time ago about this, like the Fed, saying that, hey, we want the jobs numbers to be here. Remember them talking about that? We were saying, hey, they're literally chasing a moving target because 10 to 20,000 people are retiring every day, so how are we going to do that without pushing the economy way down? I'm not sure that that's really the right target issue to have inside all of this inflation stuff.
Yeah, when I first read it and kind of looked at this article, what I found interesting was more to the point of, okay, this is what the Fed has said all along as one of their check marks, right? One of the boxes they wanted to check along the way to reducing inflation was to cool off the job market. And it has had no effect or no working effect on that for a long time until now. But what I hadn't considered was the demographic point that you always bring up, Ben, and it's a good point here is, well, again, how much of this is Fed related, how much of this is just kind of the aging of the workforce related. But I think the bottom line here is, for those of us who are hoping to see these rate increases, either cool off or just cease to exist for a period of time and let inflation kind of do its thing. I think this is one more element where, at least the Fed can tell itself, right or wrong, that, hey, listen, we've accomplished this part of our goal. Maybe we can cool it with the rate increases. And that's hopefully, I think the best news to come of this is if that in fact plays out that way. Up next, coming to us from the Washington correspondent, likely to be dismissed, observers see few immediate effects from the second downgrade of U.S. credit in history. And what's going on here is that Fitch downgraded the government's rating from the top rating, which is AAA, which we've always been, to AA+. And specifically the cause for that they cited was political instability around the January 6th insurrection, the trials upcoming, continued to be polarized government, and an expected debt limit fight coming up in 2025, which has been seemingly an annual event here. So there's been a lot of kind of disagreement politically, and I think the government's responded predictably here, saying that this is nonsense, that there's no reason to have any lack of faith in the U.S. government's ability to pay bills. However, Fitch has decided to take this move in light of all the turmoil out there, which politically, at the government level seems to have had very little effect, but from a stock market and from an investor's perspective, this has pushed the market and taken quite a bit of a hit today so far.
I didn't really, reading the article, I mean, do I think that the ratings change is justified and relevant? Yeah, probably, with the amount of debt that we've written the $12 or $14 trillion, and we can't even keep track of it, and, the aggressive effort by the White House to continue to wash out student loans. And I mean, we're devaluing the U.S. conversation of, debt management and debt ownership. I mean, from all the way down to our youth who think we shouldn't have to pay this debt, all the way up to the people who are running the country. So I'm not a big proponent of this in general from a standpoint of the debt side, but I think the downgrade's relevant. But when reading it, it didn't really – I wasn't like, oh, no. I think Moody's is still, AAA, right? So,
yeah.
they're not doing anything. It's not expected to do anything. And truth be told, like, where else are you going to put your money if that's what you're looking for? So at the end of the day, you have, the largest currency in the world, which is the reserve currency still. And I know that's dropped. We talked about this in shows ago, that the reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, has dropped significantly. I think it was from the 70s down into the 50s in the last couple of years. And that's, a concerning factor. I think the downgrade's probably relevant on some level. I don't think anybody should be really a AAA rating in general. I mean, everyone has risk, even governments. And I do think that the amount of, debt we've taken on, and the fact that we're not a gold standard and we print as much as we want, if I was holding paper, I'd say I'm more concerned today than I was yesterday. Right? I mean, if you owned the U.S. dollar 10 years ago or even 2 years ago, it was worth more than it is today, theoretically, based on the amount of debt we have. So,
yeah, when you take a look at how much debt we've taken on over the last 10 years, you look at the graph, and it's kind of this gradual increase in our U.S. debt. And then over the last 10 years, it's hard to really describe what that graph is showing, because it is so much greater than anything that historically we've seen as far as the amount of debt and that we've taken on. So I can understand that being a part of why they would downgrade our debt. That coupled with also the U.S. dollar actually no longer potentially being the world currency, and that us having really the kind of the U.S. dollar has been the world currency for as long as any of us have been alive, right? So now we're looking at a future that's maybe less stable or with less leverage for the debt to be secured like it once was.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading something one time. It was like the U.S. can decide to print more money, and then what they do is they, then sell a bond, and then all they have to do is pay the interest on that bond for having, printed all that money, and then they can print more money to pay the interest on that bond, and then, and so theoretically, like the cost of printing this money is significantly inexpensive versus the amount of money they're printing, because they're only paying the interest on that interest, on top of the interest. So, there's a point in time where this goes south, but we're not there yet. I would say that if you're as concerned about the rating on the U.S. bond right now, you should be as concerned about the dollar in your pocket. They're all connected, So, at the end of the day, when you count that dollar in your wallet, that is our reserve currency. That's going to pay everything back. So, if that concerns you, I'd get rid of that too.
Yeah, I think there's a big geopolitical aspect to this, and it's in a lot of our adversaries' interest to see the dollar get depegged, and the BRICS are trying to create their own ability to transact and exchange currencies. We have the whole Chinese Silk Road initiative with however many trillions they're pumping into that. But I think the one kind of silver lining out of it all is that even these nations, when anybody at this point is looking for the safest of available options, they're still buying U.S. bonds.
They are, but I would say that, all of our enemies are trying to move everyone else to a gold standard. And I think they're ultimately doing that to literally corner our currency, because then they can say, this is not a gold standard. Which one do you want to own? And that's where I think the one world currency comes from. I think that's where, Coin, FedNow, and Bitcoin and all this stuff just converged, because they say, you can have all your money in the U.S. dollar, but what's that really worth? Because here, I can translate this into a physical gold coin. And I think that's the problem. And I think, as they're trying to get Mexico to join and all these different countries, eventually, if everyone's on the gold standard and we're not, we are in some serious trouble.
That's going to do it for Money in the News. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap. When we come back, unlocking the secrets of long-term care, safeguarding your future. We'll be right back. Money on Tap.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about unlocking the secrets of long-term care and safeguarding your future. And I just remembered, if you are joining us via podcast, we want to make sure that if you like or subscribe, go ahead and drop us a note at info@yourmoneyontap.com or give us a ring. And we've got some Money on Tap gear for you. Love to send that out to you and appreciate you for liking and subscribing to Money on Tap. The topic today, unlocking the secrets of long-term care, is going to cover for you, the who needs it, where you can get it, and that's all sorts of different places are considered in that long-term care equation, different ways to pay for it. There's benefits, there's triggers. We're going to get into some of the details and some of the, right now, where the story of long-term care has come from and traveled to, if you're new to this topic today, so that you can get into some solutions with us around the long-term care story. So with that, who needs this long-term care? What are the statistics around the long-term care story? And a lot of the long-term care, that was funny. The long-term care has also had that long-term scare part to it as well. It is a topic that has a lot of emotion around it. And there's a lot of need, and it's understandable why we have this kind of emotion. 48% of us aren't even going to actually need long-term care. So that's, I guess some of us are going to be like, gosh darn it, why was I so worried about this? But that's really a pretty significant amount of us that are going to need long-term care. It's a flip of a coin. And what kind of care that's going to look like? Well, 27% are going to be less than 2 years. 12% are going to be 2 to 5 years, and 14% are going to be over 5 years. And the story around years is not necessarily so much with the time that it is in that category. It's the financing. It is. And that is the part where so often we talk about how these stories travel through our finances and our families, because it is a family affair.
Yeah, it really is, Seth. And there's those are great stats around who's likely to need it. But the other concern, so you have the medical needs, you have the cost associated with it. But one of the concerns that's also prevalently out there is the resources available. The last study we've seen was done in 2019, so you can expect with our aging demographic, this is probably already significantly old news. But there were 65,600 regulated long-term care homes here in the United States. But they were already serving 8.3 million residents at that point. And with the population aging as it has, understandably, competition for space is rapidly increasing. And it's changing the face of how this care is going to be provided. And I think that also ramps up the cost as the skilled labor necessary to care for people becomes scarcer and scarcer and more expensive each and every day.
Statistics are the statistics, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we look at it and I say, the numbers are, I'm staring at them on our screen right now. It's 48% of people will never need long-term care. Like, you're listening, there's a 1 in 2 chance that you're okay. Like, this whole conversation is completely meaningless. Like, just forget it, just move on. The problem is that if you are one of the other people on the side of the coin, the cost is astronomical. I mean, that's why people get scared of when you talk about long-term care, and no one wants to go to a nursing home and assisted living facility. Like, it's just like no one wants to talk about it. I mean, it is just the bad news bears conversation. Like, you don't want to have a conversation about long-term care. So, but we're going to have it today, and I'm actually excited about this because I think there's a lot of really good positives because there's so much you can do no matter what you do to deal with long-term care or any sort of care that's in the future. The preparation alone will make your life better. No matter what preparation it is, you're going to be in a better position for it. When I think about long-term care, and you're talking about costs and numbers of organizations and places and people, and there's just so much stuff. And we were talking about this on the show before. Seth was like, "Man, there's just so many numbers to this thing. 1 in 2 chance you're going to need long-term care, and what are you going to do about it? Because the expense is horrific." In the idea of a care facility, you're going to spend $7,000 to $8,000 on average in our country for a care facility, right, Dan? I mean, that is the numbers. I mean, that's what you got. It's going to, and in New Hampshire, you can get a little bit lower. You start going to Alaska, it's like $36,000. Like, I'm not getting care in Alaska. I don't want to be there anyways. So that being said, the numbers drastically rise over the next 20 years to almost double that, to like $15,000 a month almost. So that's based on the statistics that, hey, the cost of care is averaging about 7% annually. I think that's a low number. I've seen much higher numbers. The growth rate in the healthcare system is significantly higher. But, when it comes down to whether you need care or not, the big gamble is not really, I mean, paying for it is one thing. Either you have the money or you don't. But the real gamble is getting the care. We've chatted about this a couple times in different conversations. We have this massive growth of people retiring, and those people will all eventually need, 50% of them need care. So we're going from 45 million Americans to 120 million Americans retired, right? So we've got all these people who need care today, but we're going to triple the number of people retired. So that's going to triple the number of things. But then on top of it, the workforce is declining, which we talked about earlier today in the show. Like, the number of people entering the workforce is growing lower, and people providing this care is huge. So I think in 20 years, when some people who are listening to this show might need some form of care, it won't matter whether you have the money. It won't matter what you're doing for it, whether you've got long-term care insurance or you're super wealthy. It'll be whether they can find a bed in a care facility for you. Like, we can't build these things fast enough in reality for what's going on. Right now, there's parts of this country where I know you can get, we've talked about this, like there's places, I know there's places here in New Hampshire that aren't full, but there's places elsewhere in the country that are just packed out and they've got a waiting list, So there's some complications around all this stuff. I think where our world is going with all of these things is, there's a huge focus on home care. In providing home care, there's home care services, additional provision services that can kind of keep you more comfortable at your house, maybe even when you're not qualifying for actual long-term care in itself. But that's less than 2/3 the cost than getting into a skilled nursing facility. And I pose this, guys, as we're kind of getting into the show and really digging deep. There's so many solutions, and I think we're all excited to talk about different things we've done to help people. But I think one thing we all agree on is that there is an epidemic inside the long-term care world that's ready to hemorrhage. And, one of the statistics is that the cost for Medicaid and Medicare is going to over double in this space from what they're currently pushing out. And I think we fail to recognize that we don't have an unlimited resource of funds, even though probably 90% of Congress would disagree with me. We don't have an unlimited set of funds, and there's going to be cutbacks in this space. There's going to be a place where, they say, hey, we can't spend $300 billion in this. We're going to have to cut that down. And that means what they provide for everybody today will be a little less tomorrow per person. Those are concerns I have.
As it stands right now, Medicaid's covering about 20% of all Medicaid or all long-term care funding. But it's a number that is, likely unsustainable with a shrinking tax base. And the issue there is that in order to be qualified, you have to spend down your assets in a very, very significant way. And this varies by state. But, in some states you can have as little as $2,000 of income remaining. And that's a major problem, particularly for your family and those left behind. The financial level you need to take yourself down to be fully reliant on government programs to cover your costs. And with that comes, lack of choice in terms of where and how you get cared for. So really the only ways, there's a number of ways, we're going to get into that here shortly. But if you do want to be able to retain some family assets, you do want to have choice about where you're cared for, and you want to be able to leave your, healthier spouse in a better situation, you really do need to take some action here and find a way to develop some kind of protection for yourself that you can personally own.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are unlocking the secrets of long-term care and safeguarding your future. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey guys, Seth Krussman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about unlocking the secrets of long-term care, safeguarding your future. If you are out there in the podcast world, and subscribe. Please drop us a note. Let us know. We'd love to send you some Money on Tap gear, and thank you for being a part of Money on Tap. Dan, where are you taking us?
Yeah, I just wanted to take a quick step back and just talk about the total cost of long-term care and nursing home coverage and where it's coming from. But as it stands right now, Medicaid's paying about 43% of the total cost for care and facilities for seniors. Medicare is covering about 17%. Only about 12% is being presently covered by long-term care policies, and that leaves 24+% that is being paid for out of pocket, which is, I think, the concern that we're trying to help people eliminate here is to find ways to shift that cost, away from you and your family and into something else.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we see this regularly, like the traditional concept of long-term care insurance has completely, the world has fumbled the ball in that space. I mean, I have people who call us who say, hey, and I didn't even sell some of these things, but they're like, hey, GE and, MetLife or Mass, whoever they bought their long-term care policy from, hey, they sent me this increase and I don't know what to do with it. And it's going to be, and I just got one the other day. The person told me they said they were going to increase their premiums, what they pay to have the insurance, by 20% each year for 5 years. It was a massive scenario. I was like, right now, you can afford the premium increase. Let's just see what happens next year, because it's not guaranteed that they're going to do it, but this first year is. And they have to apply to the state and justify that they have exorbitant costs above and beyond what they projected, and the government allows it, and it says in the policy it could. But long-term care, most of the companies have gotten away from that. I think there's, one or two companies, outliers, that are still kind of selling that traditional term insurance kind of long-term care coverage and whatnot. But the rest of the community, the rest of the insurance community has really moved to a life insurance purchase. Like you buy life insurance and it converts somehow, some way into long-term care. Huge wins in that space. One is life insurance is a little bit easier to underwrite, especially some of these policies that are focused on long-term care. Secondly, the big win is if you don't use it for long-term care, there's some form of a death benefit for your family. There's a return of an asset to the family versus that money just being lost forever, which a lot of people complain about. And the other piece is that the premiums don't ever change. Like the cost of what you pay for this thing is defined. You can either pay it all up front, pay it out over 10 years or 25 years or your whole life. You get to choose how you pay it, and you know exactly what it is, so you can throw it in a budget. People love that when it comes to retirement and figuring out long-term care. The other thing is that the newer programs are extremely home care friendly. For all the reasons we spoke about earlier, the number of people who are going to need care, it's going to mostly be provided in your house, which is where most consumers want to receive their care. They want to stay home with their family or their spouse or whatever. And so that's been really well received, and there's no waiting time for some of these things that are in the home care arena. That's a pretty neat, huge benefit. People want to stay home, but the truth is the ability to stay home is going to be a necessity long term, because you're going to need someone to come in and care for you, because there's just not going to be enough beds in 20 years. Honestly, on the current rate and what the construction is and the development of that space, the projections of the people needing care and the number of beds available is completely off kilter.
So one of the things we want to try to understand in this is right now, wherever you're at in your current finances, your age, your debt, whatever defines you right now in a snapshot. Okay, let's just say that you have a long-term care scenario less than 2 years down the road, or excuse me, it's for 2 years, right around 2 years. Okay, so what is that cost of around $186,000, a little less than $186,000? How is that going to work its way through your finances? And Dan, you kind of addressed some of the statistics there around percentages of what's getting covered out there. And a significant part of that coverage, tell me if I'm wrong here, was around 24% that was
right.
Out of pocket. Yeah. So the other places that people are paying for this, and this might be you, would be Medicaid, which is the government supported option, right, to get that paid for, which is a part of that Medicaid insurance. Now, to do that, Dan, you were talking about having a level of income that is it's fairly low, and that might be where you're at. You might not have an income that supports anything more than Medicaid right now, and that's how you're going to cover that. If you have income above and beyond that, and you're of age, and you have that Medicare, which might cover a portion of it. Okay. After that, we're looking at health savings accounts, and some kind of outliers there are, VA insurance and home equity or reverse mortgage on a home. Those are the options. And the questions I think people need to ask themselves, just as a quick survey right now, if that's you, how do you cover this? Not an option.
Yeah, Seth. And I think the thing is people figure out how to cover it for their spouse, right? Their wife or their husband goes into a care facility and they start doing, things, and they're like, well, I can't qualify for Medicaid because I got too much money, and I've got to spend down all their assets, and I got to get my assets down to like $115,000 or something, and I get to keep the car and the home. And so what do I do between now and then? Because I don't want to just spend all this money, and they end up taking, home equity lines or reverse mortgages. It's horrible. And then the next thing you know, their spouse spends way longer than they ever expected in a care facility, and now they are spending their own money, and they have the line of credit. They find themselves in a pit of despair really quick. And the truth is that long-term care insurance can be significantly cheaper than any of those outcomes, and you can potentially have a death benefit coming back to you if you don't use it. But what's really great about that scenario is that you're actually, when you buy insurance, you're not protecting the person who's going to need the care. You're protecting the healthy spouse. If you need care, you don't want to leave the healthy spouse pass on this earth and see them in financial ruin. I mean, that is a living death watching that happen. Like, because you can't do anything about it. Like, I've met many people saying, I want to do Medicaid planning. And that's fine. We have attorneys, we have things, and there's lots of ways to do that stuff, and you can prepare for that. But it is a painful process. I mean, it is not a fun thing to do. Medicaid planning is not an exciting way, like, hey, how do we do this? It's usually high taxes. You're liquidating IRAs. You're putting things into immediate annuities and spreading the income out, and you're trying to shelter everything into a trust and buy your way through 5 years. And I'm just talking fast, but it is not a fun process. Matter of fact, when someone wants to do that, I really, really feel like, is there any other way we can solve this for you? And there usually seems to be a way, but not always. And so if you're going to do it, and like I said earlier, planning really does make everything a little bit better. I think people people run scared because I think our world has really treated things like long-term care insurance poorly, and I think they've been poorly managed. And I think there's really strong opportunities now for people to protect, your spouse that you love so dearly. Because if you're the person who needs care, the last thing any one of us want to do is be a burden to the person who's loved us all those years.
And I'm sure we've all had experiences, but I've had one with family where, the first spouse to be sick, they at that point in time they had assets, the assets were spent down entirely. Then he passed, and the second spouse to be sick, essentially, one of the New England states will make a deal with you where they will cover your care and allow you to be in the home that you're presently in, but on your demise, they're going to sell your house and cover the tab.
Yeah.
Right. So, the consensus was, well, that's a great deal. And I'm looking at it like, well, that's not so great.
Yeah.
So, literally all the assets were spent, and on the second passing, the house was sold to pay the bill. So, they went into this years-long, difficult health journey, with significant assets and came out with nothing.
I use the illustration, and I love it because it really helps people a lot. And if you live in the New England area, you can drive 93 right through New Hampshire and so forth. Hit the toll booth, hit 95, pay the toll booth, zip on down, take the highway, boom, boom, boom. Hit the George Washington Bridge, pay that toll. You can hit toll booth after toll booth after toll booth. It will get you there, and it's an exorbitant cost. But if you live where I do in middle New Hampshire, I can take, Route 9 right across over to Keene. I can hop on 91. I can go all the way down, hit 84, and then only hit the Tappan Zee. I know I refuse to call it the Cuomo Bridge. Hit the Tappan Zee Bridge, pay that small toll, and then zip over and, come down, the Palisades and, miss the George Washington and save myself a bundle of money in tolls. I can choose to do that. They're both legal. They're both legitimate. One takes more planning. One takes a little more effort, a little more thought. It's people just say, "Oh, now I'm here, Dan, and that house I have to put up, and that's a good deal because that's the toll in front of me." Like when you're on the George Washington Bridge, to turn around, you can't, and that's where people find themselves is the inability to turn around, and the toll is enormous, and it's the only option. So it looks good because, well, that's just the choice I already made. There's always something you can do to make this situation, I think, better than whatever going down the regular roads are.
I was so relieved to realize that the 93 and the 95 were not how fast you're driving. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. If you're out there in the podcast world and you like or subscribe, send us a note. We'd appreciate it, and also want to send you some Money on Tap gear, hot off the press. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are unlocking the secrets of long-term care and safeguarding your future. Love how we're going to get into some solutions here. And by the way, if that was you that we were talking to that just doesn't quite understand how a scenario of long-term care works through your finances today, give us a call. It's so important for you to really understand what these scenarios look like. And that's just part of the process here at Brayshaw Financial Group is planning through these kind of events with you. We're here for you to make that happen. We look forward to you reaching out to us, and we look forward to solving some problems here at Money on Tap.
Are you looking for professional guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are bringing it in here on unlocking the secrets of long-term care and safeguarding your future. And there's, for one, there's a lot of numbers that we're throwing out here for you folks. We realize that it was one of the challenges that we had as we go through all of this data is like, what's important here, right? We want to have a show that you can use. Not that you're going to be able to, solve all of your problems here at Money on Tap by listening to a couple of shows, but this is a resource for you to really get going in a direction that asks you some questions that you can kind of pull through here and create some solutions or start to address some of the questions that you have around this, to start to ask the more questions that you need to have answered to create these solutions. So, boy, lots of questions, lots of data, lots of solutions here in this arena. And for one, there's qualifiers, right? What is even what's a qualifier for you to know that you may even have a long-term care event on your horizon?
One of the common objections too is, how do you qualify for benefit? How do you qualify for care? What are the things you need to look for and understand about that? Particularly if you've chosen to buy a long-term care policy or a hybrid solution that offers a long-term care benefit. And it really comes down to two primary things. There's two types out there. There's the reimbursement programs, which you simply have to incur costs from a qualified provider. And if you do, you submit those invoices and the insurer will cover those costs for you up to whatever limits you've previously purchased. And then there's an indemnity policy, which is just going to pay you a flat benefit per month based upon, in the words of your own doctor, qualifying on an ADLs basis, which is an activities of daily living. And this is important terminology that relates to this particular topic. And the 6 activities of daily living are bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, which is getting in and out of bed or a chair, eating, and continence. If you can no longer do 2 out of 6 of those, again, based upon the word of your own doctor, you will trigger the benefit and begin to receive those monthly payouts. And then there's one other qualifying factor here, which has become an absolutely huge part of the story here, and that's cognitive impairment, memory issues. And the general rule of thumb around that is when your doctor agrees and is willing to put into writing, that someone is dangerous to be left alone, then you will begin to receive the benefits.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I was talking to somebody just the other day, I was like, there's a point in time in the cognitive space where, a husband or wife is doing a ton of stuff for their spouse and they don't realize that they're projecting the idea that everything's okay. Like they just need a little bit of help. And they don't realize that cognitive can be significantly more severe. I mean, at some point in time when you can't leave someone home alone, the cognitive impairment hasn't been met. I mean, that's really kind of the litmus test for that. And then sometimes cognitive can be just enough that, any of those 6 ADLs can't be done. So you might have a cognitive scenario that it by itself is not really to the degree, but it might impair 2 of the 6 ADLs, which then therefore qualify you for long-term care. Now, a lot of people are concerned about the cost of long-term care, but once you start having a care event, you stop paying. And some people get a little concerned about the idea of doing reimbursement. Reimbursement is like, well, I have to put, bills and receipts together. It doesn't really work like that. The care facility or whoever's providing the care will literally send the bill to the insurance company and they'll reimburse them. It does take a little bit to set up, but it's not a big deal. But those are cheaper policies than having what they call the indemnity policies, which just once you trigger your 2 of 6 ADLs, if you have a $5,000 a month payment, they're just going to write you a check. That's a bigger risk to insurance companies than the idea that they might have to pay some percentage of that number up to it. There's a little bit of a discount that you get in the cost of your insurance. So I actually encourage, kind of the reimbursement policy, even though it takes a little bit more work, because it puts more money in your pocket today and it gets you to an insurable ability to care for yourself. And I think that's one thing that we've talked about. And Seth, I mean, you have some conversation on this. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I was actually thinking of kind of outside the box solutions here, and this is the stuff that personally, having gone through some of these scenarios with clients as well as my own parents, we've done a significant amount of planning in all of these arenas for them. And the part that you really just cannot necessarily plan for is what kind of an event that's going to be. Like what level of care there's going to be needed. You can prepare for it, but you just can't really necessarily plan all that stuff out. And some of the ways that we've been able to encourage either clients or, our own family to work through some of these scenarios is to do some of this thinking outside the box. And for us, that was reaching out to local ministries as well as local colleges and enlisting some of the programs that they have available for graduate level students in physical therapy or some of these other kinds of care that we were able to engage with them and lessen some of the costs of those care. Now, that's not necessarily like the reimbursable kind of a scenario. That's outside the box. And that's one of the things that when we're taking a look at different products and placements is that we're able to kind of work through some of those scenarios of how these products engage with you, your life, and your finances to be able to just try to future what are some of the possibilities here? What are the resources that you have right where you are and where you're at?
You really do have to try to maximize your scenario. I think that's one of the things that, you really want to go to somebody who, like us, who looks at all the different avenues and has resources to address everyone's financial situation from probably every directive of, how you might resolve that care. Seth, you've had a lot of personal experience with this, and I think that's a phenomenal scenario. But there are a lot of ways to deal with this, and there are people who can self-insure, and you can do it in a healthy way too. Like you can say, hey, listen, I'm going to prepare. Medicaid will be my last final out, but I want to try to figure out how to mitigate the overall expenditure personally and the out-of-pocket costs. There's lots of things you can do, but it takes planning now and so forth. I think, we had, it's got to be a year or two, maybe 3 ago. I don't know. We had on the show, we had a representative from one of the insurance companies, One America, and, they had a product that I actually like. It has, it's a 0-day elimination period in home care. Like you don't have to, once you qualify, they're paying immediately. Like there's no waiting. And they also offer two other things, Dan, that we have used with a lot of clients. Specifically, one is an inflation rider, and two is it's a lifetime spousal benefit that you can get lifetime coverage as an add-on rider that mitigates a ton of concern because, in the time, and one thing we haven't talked about in great detail, and we have in the past, is that when people need care, you either need a very little amount of care or you need a whole heck of a lot amount of care. Like you need 15 years or 20 years or you need like 2 months. But the average is like 3 years. But that's only a small percentage of people who get care and 3 years later they pass away. It's either my grandmother was in a nursing home, I think 15 plus years. So having a 0-day elimination on the home care really covers the initial front really, really well. Because that first 90 days is a huge portion of time where people they get hurt, they have an event, and then they die. And there's no care, and then the long-term care was an expense, and that's kind of the old scenario. And the One America has a death benefit feature, so you don't have to worry about that. But they instantly start paying, which is great. And if you have that longevity scenario in the long-term care, which is kind of the other second major need for a number of percentage of people that have a care event, well, they've got that lifetime feature. And I just love that because it just resolves so much for the healthy spouse because that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, that lifetime spousal benefit is truly a godsend. When you can put in place at least some level of coverage and you can look across the table and as a married couple know that it doesn't matter who gets sick first, it doesn't matter who passes first. For the remainder of our lives, we will have this benefit that we purchased today, which is just a comforting feeling, but from the planning perspective, you can just plug that number into the scenario and know it'll be there, which is absolutely huge.
And we have care immediately right away. And if we don't use this thing at all, our kids get something.
Right.
It kind of kills all the birds with one stone, and it doesn't become a, kind of a worthless thing that you're going to, fear some sort of massive increase financially because it's a fixed cost. And that really brings a lot of peace of mind to a lot of people.
You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap today. If you have been listening today and wondering what some of these solutions look like, give us a call. We have a free scenario for you to go ahead and just run the numbers. Take a look at what some of these outcomes look like. It's free to you, and it's a direct quote, and it applies directly to you, which is far greater than just speculating about what these outcomes look like. And we love doing this for you guys. It's close to our heart. All right. This is why we're here. It's important for you to understand. And we love empowering you to make great decisions about your finances and be a successful investor. All right. We'll look forward to talking to you this next week. Take care.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.